there friends, thanks for joining me again, and I have a confession to make. I kinda don't like squirrels. I don't want to use the word hate because hate is a pretty strong word. Squirrels are pretty useful. They plant more trees than any other creature out there as far as I know because they bury nuts and then they forget about them and then trees grow and things like that. They're actually pretty neat little animals. They're kind of cute. I've heard of people, who have found baby ones and raised them, and so don't get me wrong, squirrels themselves aren't bad, but I definitely don't like them in my own yard and in my garden because they're actually pretty destructive. We have some fruit trees here in my yard. We planted them years ago. When we first moved in, we had 2 apple trees, and then since then I added 2 peach trees, an apricot tree, a cherry tree, and a plum tree. Anyway, so the squirrels almost always steal a bunch of fruit off of our trees. We had to plant them around the perimeter of our yard just to be able to fit them in because I don't really have a whole lot of space here. So it's right next to the fences. It's real easy for them to go from this tree that my neighbor has, which is a monstrously huge tree, down along the fence and then steal pretty much any fruit they want. So I have had some issues with squirrels pretty much from day one, and I don't enjoy it. So I have for you some ideas on how to humanely deal with the squirrels, because obviously we all know a lot of people like to deal with them in less humane ways. I have some suggestions for how you could deal with them without having to harm them in the same ways that many people may suggest. So the first one I would suggest is to feed them elsewhere. If you feed them somewhere else than where your fruit is, they'll still be getting food because what they really want is just to eat. I mean, can you blame them? They're animals. They need to eat just like all of us. And a little bit of my fruit I don't mind sharing, but when they take all of it, that's just not fair. Or when they're being destructive to my trees by taking bedding and stuff like that, they'll actually take the bark to make into bedding for their nests. So if I feed them elsewhere or even leave some stuff out that they like for bedding, like they like little bits of fabric and things like that, they'll take that instead. So they need to eat, of course. If they just eat the food that you're leaving out for them, some of this like dry corn or something else, then you can keep your good, organic peaches or whatever it is you're growing. It's a fair trade in my view. Feed them away from the area where you want to have your fruit, and then they'll get, what they want without having to be so destructive to your yard. The second version of ways that you can help deal with them humanely would be scent repellents. I've tried some of this rather unsuccessfully. However, I have seen some of these products on the shelves in stores or even online. I haven't used them because they're not organic, but maybe some people have had more success with them than I have. So the reason I haven't used them is because they're not organic, but again, some people have had real good success with this. So you can put the scent repellents out and then they don't like the smell and they stay out. I have tried other ones that I've found that are organic. I've heard they like cinnamon or don't like cinnamon, and so put that out there. That one was not successful at all. Other spicy ones, using the home versions that are not, are suitable for organic gardens has not worked for me. But again, maybe it's worked for some other people, so I don't want to say it's not successful, just maybe mine are more determined to get to my fruit than others. The third suggestion I have is ultrasonic sound. Ultrasonic sound is like a noise that the machine makes to keep away things like mice, rats, and even squirrels. And then there are other ones that keep away voles and moles and things. But I have heard some negative reviews on this that, sometimes they can keep dogs and cats out. So it's better suited to a garden where there isn't other animals. But then again, there are different ones on the market. So you'll have to look into it and see, if you have a pet, is it going to annoy the pet, etc. But yeah, so this is totally organic. It's doesn't harm the squirrel. It's just the noise that annoys them. So then they want to stay away. So that's another way you can help keep them out of your yard. The third way is with a motion-activated sprinkler. I really, really, really want to try this method. I have seen some people who have said that this is really successful, and I've seen these on, the shelves and things like that. But unfortunately for me, they've been, a little too costly for me to end up using them in my own garden. But basically, if you have a garden and the squirrel comes across, your yard to get to it, having a motion-activated sprinkler that turns on and gets them wet scares them away and then they run away. That sounds like a genius idea to me. So I really wish I could try it, maybe someday. The next way would be bird netting. Now my trees are too big to bird net, but if somebody was having, issues with the squirrels digging up in their garden or taking produce from their garden and things like that, a bird net fence around the garden would definitely help keep them out. But you got to be careful, because if you would have to do the sides and possibly even the top, because obviously squirrels are good, climbers. So a lot of times people will put a fence around their garden anyway, but squirrels are small, they're good climbers, and so they can get in through some fairly small holes. So that's why I say bird netting, because bird netting has really, really small holes. There's no way a squirrel could get in with that. So if you really had a problem with squirrels and you wanted to keep them out, you may consider bird netting for your whole garden. Or small trees, if you have a small tree and it's small enough that you could actually put a net around it to keep the squirrels away. My next suggestion would be just a sprinkler that isn't motion activated. I do this all the time. So whenever I see squirrels in my yard and they're up in my trees and I don't want them, I'll actually just take my sprinkler set on jet or something like that and spray them. And they eventually get the idea that this is my territory. Squirrels are territorial, so they understand. But if you yell at them and make noise and squirt them and stuff like that, eventually they get the idea that this is your territory. They'll stay away unless they're really, really determined, or your cherries are really, really delicious and they just won't stay away no matter what you do. But yes, this can be a very effective way to help keep them out of your trees or garden. If you have the time to hang out, or if you're already in the garden and you see them, just spray them and then chase them away, and hopefully they'll get the message and stay out. And then my last method would be to trap and relocate them. This is not my favorite method, but if I'm having a really, really problematic squirrel, I will go ahead and take this measure. Because they build a nest in a tree and they live there for a while. Sometimes they'll even have multiple nests. They sleep in them at night. It'd be like taking someone and putting them somewhere where they're not familiar with, and they would essentially be homeless until they can build a new home. And so it is a little bit mean to do, especially, I would never do this actually, during the time when they're actually raising young, or if it looks like it's a nursing mom. You can usually tell if it's a nursing mom. But if it's a male, or it's the off season for when they're actually rearing young, I'll go ahead and do it again if they're, a real issue. But I have this little squirrel trap. You put like a nut or something they would really like to be, getting into, something they would really like to eat in there. And then they go inside, the trap shuts, and then I can take them somewhere else, to some kind of a park where there's lots and lots of kids and people, and they'll be eating snacks and kids will be dropping things, and so they'll have tons to eat and they'll be very happy somewhere else, but they just won't be here to be destructive to my garden. So there are my suggestions for humane ways to deal with squirrels. Some of them, again, are more effective than others, and so you'll have to kind of figure out what's going to work for your area and whether or not it's the trees or if it's the garden that you're actually trying to protect from them. But yeah, so hopefully this was helpful to you, and Frugal Green Girl will see you next time.